Sunday of Memorial Day weekend here at 105.5 WDHA. Military Appreciation Month as well for the month of May. And my guest is a graduate of West Point University and also a former member of the United States Army. Brian Bergen, welcome back to Jersey Magazine and WDHA.
Thanks for having me, sir. I love being here.
So one of the things that we've been talking about frequently this month has been the transition from military life back to civilian life. So let me ask you, as former member of the military, what was that like for you transitioning back from military life to the so-called civilian world?
Yeah, well, look, I appreciate you asking it because this is something that's often overlooked, and it's a real difficult transition. You got to imagine these people were broken down and their life totally transformed into something different, and they're integrated into society that they then have to leave and join a whole different society. For me, it was really tough. The biggest and the hardest challenge for me, quite honestly, was just understanding that in the military, especially being an officer, everybody's moving linearly towards a different goal, the same goal, united goal, which is to progress through the ranks and to grow in responsibility. And in the civilian world, it's not quite the same way. You could have peers of yours who are ambitious and seeking promotion. You could have peers of yours who will stay at the same position for their whole lives because they have different priorities. Maybe they prioritize family, or they prioritize their kids' sports, or some other extracurricular activities. And you have other people who might be demoted in the same role. It's hard for somebody in the military to understand that because, like I said, we're all marching forward towards progress, it seemed. And it's just different. It's hard to understand that, and it takes a while for people to adapt.
I was thinking as you were talking about that, my dad, who had come back from World War II, and he worked for a few years afterwards, and he went to college after that on the GI Bill. So it's, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years after the war is over. And he's sitting as a 20-something-year-old with these 18-year-olds looking
Yeah.
around going, yeah, I'm a little beyond this. I mean, he graduated and all, but it was such a bizarre experience for him coming
Yes.
back.
Yeah, you have different perspective, and you quite frankly have just a different worldview. I mean, even if they were the same age, and that's the thing, like you're comparing it, which is rightfully so. It happens to a lot of someone coming back and enter an environment where he's in school with younger kids. But even if you come back, you're with people the same age, you have a different worldview. You've seen things, experienced things, whether you've been to combat or not, that other people haven't. I think it gives you a different perspective, a unique perspective, and it's a challenge for most people to understand why everybody doesn't share the same perspective when they come back, and why don't they see the bigger picture in some cases, and that's part of the challenge.
You know, uh, Coming back from combat, I think everybody can realize that, well, this is going to be totally different coming back to civilian life. But what about just the regular day-to-day military life? How difficult is that transition back?
Very difficult because, like I said, you're in a different environment where the military is your priority. Every day, everything is about the military and ultimately the mission. And look, whether or not you serve in a combat environment, you're in some significantly stressful situations amongst your peers. Training is rough too. So you form a common bond and united purpose, and you're training for the big mission. You're every single day you're training for it. You believe in it. You're looking forward to it. And so when you leave that, you've given away that camaraderie. You've given away a group of people that all serve a common purpose towards a common goal, and you've gotten yourself into society where people have their own self-interests and are working towards their own unique personal goals. It's just a little bit of a different environment.
One of the guests who we had on a few weeks ago was Brigadier General Mike Eastman, and he said that there are points in time where the family will say, "Dad, Dad, we're home now."
That's true. That's true. It happens. My wife does say it to me periodically. She's like, these kids are not your soldiers, they're your children. And sometimes it can be frustrating because they're just not, kids are kids, and they're not doing what you tell them to do necessarily all the time, where they talk back. It's a little bit different. That's not to say that doesn't happen in the military too. I mean, there's this illusion that the military is this one big functional order and everybody just listens all the time. It doesn't quite happen that way either. But the recourse you can take when they don't listen is quite different than with your family, or anybody else in the civilian world.
So you come out and you go into politics, and I mean, if you've been on social media at all in the past few years, you know how crazy that whole thing can be. What is that like for you now, coming, basically, from a military background, working towards that common goal, as you said, and even though, whatever party you're on, we think there's a common goal, the betterment of the country and the betterment of the citizens. But what is that like working on a day to day in that environment?
It makes me want to slam my face off a concrete brick. Honestly, I mean, it's really that's it's the best way to say it. These, I would just when I think they can't disappoint me more, they disappoint me again in politics. And people are self-interested and selfish, and quite often, and I hate to make people jaded, but for a lot of politicians out there, the very last thing they're thinking about is anybody else. And the first thing they're thinking about is their own interests, their own agenda, how they can benefit themselves. And sometimes that's coded in what they can do for their constituents or their district. But in reality, that is a means to stay elected a lot of times. Now, there are good people out there who are trying to do the right thing, but they're few and far between in the political world. And it's really disheartening. I've witnessed people trade their votes on things for meaningless stuff that just fulfills their ego and isn't actually, and they know they're doing the wrong thing. That's what bothers me the most, when people know they're doing the wrong thing. But that aside, I have hope. I do. I have hope that we can kind of turn them around. But I think it's important to try to get veterans elected because, again, veterans have a different worldview for the most part. And I think they're more likely than anybody else to be able to sacrifice their own self-interest for the greater good, because quite frankly, that's what they've had to do in before. And look, I could be, this could be my last term as a state assembly. I could never be an elected official again. And I'd be disappointed because I love what I do and what I can do for people, but I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity or my values in order to keep the office. And oftentimes people will, but I think veterans would be an exception for the most part. Now, we're not all perfect. We have our flaws too. And I'm not riding around my white horse here telling you I'm the perfect man either. But I think there's something to be said for military service and how it molds you into a person that can see beyond your individual self-interest and the short term to the longer term greater good.
I mentioned the disparity between what's happening political lines lately, but I do want to point out for our WDHA and WMTR listeners that you've had a number of bills that have been sponsored that have gone across the political aisle, where you've had people working with you from the other party. And I think that's refreshing in many ways. And again, working towards a common goal, we hope.
Yeah. No, it is possible. It really is possible. And, I have a lot of secret relationships across the other side of the aisle. Okay, people call me all the time, and they sometimes they wish they could say what I say, and they believe the same way I believe. But there's outside forces in the political world that sometimes control people, and unfortunately, a lot of times they're controlled. But yes, there are things that we work on in a bipartisan way to try and get it done. And the best things that I work on don't have my name on them at all, because I could just come up with a good idea, work with good stakeholders, and give it to somebody on the other side of the aisle who's actually got a chance in hell of getting it done. Because I don't, because I'm a Republican in the minority, and they don't want to see my name on anything. But it's the military, part of me that's like, as long as the mission's accomplished, that's what really matters. It's not about credit or accolades or ribbons on your chest. It's about getting the job done.
One of the times that you were on with us earlier here on WDHA, you talked about the difference between feel-good benefits, which have a place, and real lasting benefits for New Jersey veterans. To that point, what have you been working on lately?
Yeah, so I drives me nuts. The feel-good stuff that doesn't actually move the needle drives me insane. because it's something that politicians can use to go and glad hand people at VFWs and American Legions and say, hey, we're doing something for the veterans, when they're not actually doing anything that's going to move the needle for the veterans. The biggest thing I got on my plate is the same thing as the last time I was on with you, and the same time thing previously, and that's that tax credit, the tax abatement for veterans based on your disability rating. Right now, 100% disabled veterans don't pay property taxes, but 90%, 80%, 70% pay their full boatload. And the problem with that is if you are a 90% disabled veteran in New Jersey, you make the same amount of money from the federal government as if you're a 90% disabled veteran in Arkansas, but the property taxes in New Jersey disproportionately affect you and they eat that money up. So we should be leveling that playing field by giving a reduction in the property taxes. So those federal dollars being aimed to help the vet can help them the same way as in another state. That bill, man, if I do nothing else, I'm going to get that bill done one day. I don't care how many of my fellow politicians I have to sacrifice to get there. It's gonna happen because it's the right thing to do. It's a good bill, and it might take me a decade, but I'm never gonna stop working on that one.
Your passion comes through both now in this interview and in the number of videos that I've seen you post to social media about various causes that you believe in.
That's right.
One of the things, and this is away from the military aspect of it, Brian, is you recently voted against pay raises for New Jersey lawmakers. I would love to be able to vote myself a raise. Why did you do that?
Well, because we don't deserve it. We don't deserve the money we get, let alone a pay raise. And we are elected to work for the people, and we're not supposed to make tons of money off this thing. That's not how it's supposed to work. This is a part-time job. The state legislature is a part-time job. We make, as of today, $49,000 a year for a part-time job. That's a lot of cheddar, okay? But they wanted to raise it to $82,000 a year. Who the hell makes $82,000 a year for a part-time job? Matter of fact, most of the population doesn't make $82,000 a year for their full-time job. It's ridiculous. And yeah, so it's
right there.
It's crazy. It's not right. It's not right. So, and the problem with this is we have to take money from you, from all of your listeners, take money and then give it to ourselves. That's awful. That's awful. You know, and I understand there's some people who say, well, it's a lot of work, and it can be. It can be if you're a very active member of the state legislature. I agree with that. But it's not real hard work. And that's what pisses me off. When they try and say this is hard work, Brian, it's not hard work. Being a welder is hard work. Okay. It makes an average of 50 grand a year. Being a Trenton cop, that's hard work. And they're making an average of $60,000 a year. What we do in the state legislature, while it might be time consuming to some degree, is not hard work. And it just irritates me that they act that way. Now we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars that we're going to be paying these legislators now every year. There's 120 of us. So 100, it's been a while since I did the math, but let's just do it right now, just for the heck of it. So 120 times the $30,000 raise, that's an additional $3.6 million a year added to the state budget just so we can make some more money. Doesn't seem right to me at all. And it bothers me.
I'm just calculating in my head how much my taxes are going to go up.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, it's insane. And what really makes me mad, I mean, this you said before, my passion comes through. I'm never short on passion, that's for sure. But the progressives who voted for this, the people who are standing up on the floor of the assembly, talking about how they want to help the poor people and they want to give them as much as they can to support them. I don't know how they can stomach the fact that they just voted to raise our pay, let's call it $4 million total a year amongst all of us. That's $4 million that could be used for so many other programs or not taken from the taxpayer to begin with. And by the way, that money comes from sales tax, income tax, product tax. So the person going who's struggling in Newark, let's, as an example, just making that up, the people struggle everywhere, but who goes to the store and buys something tomorrow, is going to pay some sales tax that's going to go to fund those legislators' salaries. To me, it's just bonkers.
You serve District 26 in Morris and Passaic Counties for the New Jersey General Assembly. Do you see going to Washington, moving from Trenton to Washington? Is that in your future, or would you prefer to stay here in New Jersey?
So I don't know. Honestly, here's the thing about me. I really have no ambition in this political thing. I'm doing it because I want to do good for people. And I happen to end up here somehow. I blink every day and trying to figure out why. So I'm not searching for anything. If an opportunity presents itself, I think I could do a good job. And I think there's a path to victory. I'll seize the moment. But if not, then I won't. I'd be just as happy next year, focusing on my business and my family as I would be in the legislature or somewhere else. So it really all comes down to the opportunity that's available and whether or not I think I'm the right guy at the right time for the job. And if so, I'll go for it. To answer your question more directly, would I ever run for Congress? The answer is yes. Would I run for governor? The answer is yes. Would I run for president? The answer is yes. I would run for anything that was out there where I thought I could do a good job and had a solid chance of winning. But I'm not pursuing any of it. If it happens, it happens. That's wonderful. If it doesn't happen, it's not going to change my life. And, I talk periodically with my West Point classmates about what I'm about to share with you, this issue here. I think West Point, to a certain degree, creates a version of us that will never be satisfied. There's nothing I could do that will ever make me feel like I've climbed the mountain and I'm standing on top. The mountain is always in front of me, no matter what it might be. And that's because as someone at West Point, you're constantly berated with people who are impossible to emulate. Patton, MacArthur, Eisenhower. I mean, those are the examples you live and breathe every single day. So if I was the president of the United States tomorrow, it'd be cool for about 30 seconds. And then I'd be like, I'm just the president. I probably could be doing more. That's just my personality. So knowing that about myself, it's foolish of me to chase these things because they're not going to be, overly satisfying for me. So the only reason I have to do it is that I think I can do good in the world and do good for other people. And if those don't all line up, I'm not doing it.
Well, Brian, I appreciate your passion, as I've said, and I appreciate your time this morning here, Memorial Day weekend. Best of luck to you with what you're doing in Trenton,
Thank
working
you.
for all of us. For DHA and MTR listeners who want to learn more about you, where can they go?
You can go to my website, which is votebergen.com. That has some info about me. Also, you can just go to the normal njledge.org website, which has all stuff about us. And actually, I would encourage people not just to go there to learn about me, but to stay informed about the bills that are up in Trenton and to make your voice heard. Whichever side of an issue you're on, it's better that we hear from you than don't hear from you and then find out you're not happy after the fact.
Brian, thanks for spending part of your Memorial Day weekend with us here.
Thank you, sir.